Welcome to Inside the Practice, your go-to podcast for stories, tips, and insights from professionals helping dental practices thrive. Hosted by Paul Auslander and Sarah Boylan, and sponsored by ePractice Manager. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Practice. We are your go-to podcast for expert insights and strategies across dentistry, dental specialties, and the various partners who support the dental industry. I'm your host, Paul Auslander. My wonderful co-host, the lovely Sarah Boylan. Hello there, Sarah.
Nice to see you, Alan.
Thank you. You know, every episode we try to bring you conversations with top industry people, hear their voices, share their thoughts and advice, and talk to dental professionals about how to grow their practices, make informed decisions, and stay ahead of the trends. And we have somebody today who is just perfect for this. So we are delighted to have Paul Auslander with us today. Paul is president of SeaBridge Private Wealth. He's got 30 years experience in this industry in financial planning, investment management, and wealth strategies for high net worth individuals. Paul has been on CNBC, on Bloomberg. He's been, his comments have been published in the Wall Street Journal and in Barron's. And he's now hit the big time and is on Inside the Practice. So Paul, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Alan.
Paul and I actually have had a mutual client and good friend for a number of years, a very, very successful dentist on the East Coast of Florida. And we found out in a conversation that we had that in common. But Paul, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. You didn't mention the other way we know each other. We're both trying to look at least 10 to 15 years younger, working out with the same trainer. So, I'm going to put a plug. I'm going to put a plug in for you. You're the only one that outworks even the trainer.
That's well. I don't know about that, but yes, we have a mutual trainer as well. Yeah. Thankfully, wonderful guy.
Yeah.
So, Paul, give us a little overview, if you will, on SeaBridge Investment Advisors and SeaBridge Private Wealth.
Sure.
We know, of course, generically what you do, but tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, it's a fun story. It was started by my mentor, actually, a gentleman named Garnet Keith, in 1996 as his family office when he retired as the vice chairman and chief investment officer at Prudential. At the time, he managed the largest institutional portfolio in the world, $300 billion of assets that Prudential managed. Today, by comparison, that's small when you look at Larry Fink and BlackRock and $10 trillion. But back then, that was a big deal. And over the years, SeaBridge grew into an organization where his family and friends became part of it. I used them as advisors. I had started my own firm. Many years later, we continued to work together and talk. And so he asked me to join up with him last year to create SeaBridge Private Wealth, which is a division of SeaBridge Investment Advisors. They had always been doing some form of wealth management, a little bit more than just investment planning. I've more formalized it. That was my background. And so that's what we've been doing. And we're having a good time doing it. We're basically a family office for multifamily office for practitioners and folks that have sold companies. And it's based out of Summit, New Jersey and Atlanta, Georgia. And then I'm spearheading an operation in the Tampa Bay area of Florida.
Excellent, Paul. Very, very good. And you are, I know that you deal with a lot of people in healthcare. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a lot of our audience.
Sure. 20 years from now, I'll call it a strategy, but it was just plain dumb luck. My a dentist that I knew, I raised my kids in the Hudson Valley in New York and started my business there. A dentist that I knew happened to be my dentist, asked me for some financial advice once. And I did that, and he became a client. He was a delegate to the New York Dental Society, and he said, my friends might be able to use this, and he got me involved with the Dental Society. The same thing happened with my chiropractor, unconnected. Same thing. He asked me to help him. Turned out that he was involved with his New York State Chiropractic Association. In addition, they all used coaches. They all had these financial coaches. They were really practice management coaches, but they advertised as financial coaches, and they wanted me to take that part to another level. And I worked with the coaching companies. So I've been doing that for years. I've moved into other areas and talked to other clients, and I have a lot of business owners who sell businesses. But at the end of the day, my core practice is practitioners.
Wow, that's so interesting. Paul, you and I have never talked about this, but I cannot tell you how similar that is, almost identical to how I became a consultant with dentists. The story is very, very similar. I happened to have a friend who was a chiropractor who said, "Hey, I need some help on organizing my business."
Yeah.
And about literally 9 months, and he was a part of this association in the Northwest. And I think we had like 20 practices involved with us. And then of course it went from there, but wow.
I was always impressed. I was always impressed with the folks. Golfers will have a coach, even though the coach is nowhere as good as that golfer, but they'll have a coach. Tennis players will have a coach. Same stories, not as good as the tennis player, but they have somebody to critique their performance and do the little things, right? I always saw the really successful practitioners had somebody that they relied on in that way. Yeah. And I thought to myself, and again, I didn't know what I was doing back then. I thought to myself, if I could get to the coach, if I could get to the practice management consultant, and help those folks make money and keep the money, because I knew what my profession was like. Not everybody lets you keep the money. I thought maybe I could give a service and build a clientele, and it worked out that way.
Excellent. Really good. Really love to hear this stuff. What do you think of the unique, what do you see in terms of dentistry and dealing with healthcare people? What are the unique, what do you see as unique challenges in dentistry in relation to what they're doing and what you can do for them?
Well, it's a great profession, and it continues to be a great profession, but it's got its challenges like everything else. Every other business is dealing with the same thing that dentists are facing now, which is rising costs at a record level, right? Way past inflation. So it's much more expensive to establish a practice. You have a lot less room for error. And so the idea of having a consultant, somebody that's going to keep you from making those errors, is going to save you a lot of money, and maybe the difference between you staying in practice or not. I think Dental Economics just ran a piece, which I found very interesting. I have a lot of specialists who are clients, and specialists for years would depend on referrals from dentists, from general practitioners. And that's coming really to a close, because those folks are getting into the practice of that specialty pretty quickly. And so the specialists are going to have to learn to market if they don't know how to market already, because they're going to have to draw in their own people. The other thing I'm seeing is the really smart dentists, one in particular that you mentioned early on, who I happen to speak of today. I spoke to him this morning. One of the things that they're saying, the smart older women and men are talking about the idea of saving teeth where it's possible, as opposed to doing implants. And to the extent possible, if you can save teeth, you can save that patient some money and grow a bigger practice than the practitioners that go right to the implant part of the service plan, the treatment plan. So I think there's some challenges. I think there's some changes going on. But like every business, the smart folks evolve and they figure it out. It's the beauty is everybody needs a dentist, right? And if you can get to a town and you can dominate that town with a great personality, right around the corner from where we work out, Alan is one of the most successful dental practitioners I've ever seen. And he's personable. He looks like he stepped out of a commercial. He's drop dead good looking. He just runs an absolutely beautiful practice. They take care of you when they walk in. Everybody seems to be reading from a script, and yet they're not reading. It doesn't seem to be mechanized. It's just one of the best run practices. He's even secretive about who he talks to. He doesn't use me as a financial person. He's even being secretive about that. I just admire him. He's done a great job. The good ones stand out.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. Yeah. Why do you think dentists often delay wealth planning? And there are risks. The longer you wait, the greater the risk. Why do you think dentists will delay wealth planning. I mean, we tell people start now, wherever you are in your career.
It's human nature, Alan, and we see it in many professions, dentistry included. Nothing makes up for time when you're trying to compound capital. We've all seen this when somebody takes an IRA out early at 21 and they just put in a couple of $1,000s and they do it until they're 35. They have more money than the person that starts at 45 and wants to finish at 65. It's called compounding the capital. And there's no substitute for time in that. So starting early is really the trick to do that. The other thing is today's professional is different than when you and I started in business. These people don't necessarily want to work their entire life. If you want to even think about getting out at 55, you've got to really start early. They want to balance, a work-life balance. They want to do things. They want to take time off. They want to see their kids go to Little League games and play in Little League games. They don't want to work the same way. The only way to do that is to put some money away as early as possible and have that work for you too. The other thing that I think is probably the most important concept I can teach in finance is to spend less than you earn. And I can't tell you how many times, they've got DR in front of their name. They want to get the great car. Next thing you know, they have a bigger house, and one thing leads to another, and they'll make the money to do it. But each year that they're struggling to pay for those toys and pay for that bigger house, they're saving that much less. There are a number of ways you can save that are tax efficient, and you can still have those things. That's one of the areas of the practice that I work on, but it requires some planning and it requires some thinking. But those are the risks as I see them.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Sarah, you were going to ask, you had something you wanted to ask there.
Yeah, well, it's funny. He just, he brought up the compounding interest, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. My sweet 16th birthday, I got a filing cabinet, and inside was the sheet of the Rule of 72. So we started about the whole compounding interest thing at a very young age, and I think it's super important for people to understand that lesson. And I don't think enough doctors are introduced to it, like when they're going to dental school. It's all about the clinical sort of stuff. And then leading into what we do as far as practice management goes, being able to take some of these additional lessons and get them applied. But, when they're starting so early in their careers, what's your advice for setting up some long-term wealth strategies for these guys?
Well, you touched on some great points, and we'll talk more about that Rule of 72 and financial literacy later on in the podcast, because there's a lot of elements that you opened up there. But for those of your listeners who don't know what the Rule of 72 is, it's a great way of figuring out how your money will double, right? If you're getting 9% interest and you divide that into 72, the quotient is the number of years it'll take roughly for your money to double. That's 8 years, and 10 years, 7.2. You can do the math, but it works almost every time. Some things can upset it, but it's a great rule, and it's a great way to think about things. I'm sorry, I lost track of your original question.
No, I just wanted to get your insight and your advice about setting up long-term wealth strategies for these young doctors.
Yeah, so this is a little contrary to some of the approaches that people take, but I'm a big believer in paying down their debt as early as possible. So that wealth management strategy early on is not so much about investing, it's paying down the debt. And particularly when you look at the interest rates today that the doctors are taking on for their debt, that's a darn good investment just to get rid of that debt, right? They're going to pick themselves up 8-9%, depending on what that practice loan is. So first and foremost, they don't have to get rid of all the debt, but I'd love to see them pay at least 50% of their debt down by the time they're 30. If they do that, then they start taking that differential and start investing. I can go through a lot of stories about investing, but you don't need a complicated investment strategy. You need a good old-fashioned Vanguard account. You need some index ETFs. Put in an S&P 500 ETF that won't cost you very much. And then as you build up that money, then find somebody like me that can help you decide what else you need to do to diversify. But just get into the cheapest savings plan you can find, and they're available out there. Schwab has them, Vanguard has them, a number of companies have them. The young people are using Robinhood today. I wouldn't suggest they buy the meme stocks. I would suggest they go with a more diversified portfolio like the S&P 500. But the fact of the matter is just take an automatic amount of money out of your checking account each and every week. You can do $100 a week. You can do $50 a week. You can do $500 a week and have it just go into that account. You'll never miss it. It's pizza and beer money.
Gosh. Well, it's funny you should say that because, for me, as I'm having this conversation with you, I tend to hold on to my cash, right? Like I
Sure.
have a hard time
Security
investing into
blanket.
it
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
it's hard to let it go through my fingers. But because it's so important for a practice to have cash on hand, how should dentists approach managing their money day to day, but also be thinking about what to invest in the future?
Well, I would never knock that idea, keeping some liquidity on hand at all times. You want to keep anywhere from 3 to 6 months of living expenses, 6 months to 9 months of business expenses, always liquid. Now, liquid means that you can get into something that gives you a higher interest rate. You don't have to go into a stock or something that's going to actually have some risk, but you can get a higher interest rate than your local bank is paying you. And that's generally one of those accounts that I mentioned before. But I think it's really smart to have ample liquidity because a relaxed practitioner is a more successful practitioner.
That's true.
That is true.
Yeah, Paul, listening to this, I keep, I'm reminded of how powerful these incredibly simple concepts are,
Yeah.
and they're so simple. There's nothing terribly sophisticated, at least initially, about the rule of 72
That's
or
right.
paying
Or
down
debt
debt.
or debt reduction strategies. We have a table of within 3 years, we'll get the client out of debt and then onward and upward to investing. And then you'll go to a higher level. Once you grow, once you have over $1 million of savings, the portfolio is markedly different than just putting 500 a month into an index fund. Then you've got to start thinking about, do I have enough small caps? Do I have enough value? Do I have enough growth? Everybody today is focused on American investing. This past year, the international markets are up 21%. American markets are up 15. It hasn't been that way for a while, but we think that's going to continue. Europe is now coming out of its doldrums in terms of defense spending. Unfortunately, all bad reasons because of the Ukraine-Russia war. But the fact of the matter is there's money to be made over there. It diversifies you a little bit. Those are strategies you use as you grow. I also like the fact that practitioners can buy the real estate that they're in and wind up having somebody else pay them rent over the years. I mean, there's a number of different places, alternative investments. You don't need to be speculative. You just need to be diversified. The key to making you feel safe, as you mentioned, you keep your money close under the mattress, as we call it. You can be almost as safe being in a diversified portfolio.
That's awesome. So I was going to say, like, the whole, what's your take on protecting assets and minimizing financial risks in this field?
So you look at I've told people that the single most important decision they make when they start their practice is a good CPA. And
Mhm.
so I hate paying taxes. I pay them. I want to support the country, but I don't always feel that it's being spent in the right areas, right? I think that's an understatement that all of us can agree, particularly when we're dealing with a shutdown that might end today. But the fact of the matter is, I keep thinking to myself, I know a lot of trial lawyers, and one of these days, some big time trial lawyer is going to sue these legislators for legislative malpractice and really teach them a lesson. It's annoying. I got stuck at an airport Saturday because of that. But I think the opportunities are there, and you set up your plan along with an accountant to minimize your taxes, and then from there you can start your savings plan. Along with minimizing taxes, you can set up a retirement plan in your practice that allows two things. Number one, it allows you to save money on a tax deferred basis. Number two, it protects it from creditors, so that the trial lawyers that might want to sue you, they can't get to that money that's in the retirement plans. And that's a big deal, by the way. One of the things I'm really emphasizing with clients is to make sure that their umbrella policies are up to snuff, that when their kids leave for college, to save a couple of dollars, they don't put the kids on their car insurance policies, because if that kid has an accident, you're talking to somebody who raised 4 sons. Believe me, I have more war stories than I can possibly tell you. You don't want that your son or your daughter backing up into somebody and having that person find out that their father's a doctor and wanting to sue them. Get them off your policy, pay the extra $1,800 a year. Stuff like that, just to make sure that from a basic level, they're litigation proof.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the collapsing these, not separating these entities can really be a problem.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
considering.
And your trial lawyers, who I know very well, I lived next door to one of the most famous ones for 15 years when I lived over in Orlando. They look at the limits of these policies. They don't want to go through climbing over glass, trying to find different portfolios and where somebody hid money. If they see an umbrella policy that's got 5 million, that's it. They'll go after that. They'll leave your assets alone, your practice alone, generally speaking, unless it's an egregious thing, somebody died, terrible accident or something, then it's all bets are off, Katie bar the door. But generally speaking, you can bait them into the ease of just saying, hey, take this policy and leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul, we get a lot of doctors, we get newer doctors coming on, but we get a lot of practices, and we have over the years who come in, it's kind of 10 years. They're maybe mid 50s. And they say, yeah, I want to practice another X number of years. We always ask them in terms of their assets, and because we want to do a growth strategy in the practice for them that is going to bring in enough cash. But this whole area of transition, and exit strategy from a financial point of view, I'm very interested in what you have to say about that. Exit planning and structuring for future transitions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. It's a rather common topic.
Yeah. So you covered a lot of ground there, and I'll bunch it into a couple of things.
Okay.
It's a myth that you retire and you spend less money. You actually spend more money the first year you retire, because you have all this freedom. You have all this pent up demand when you weren't able to do it when you're in practice. And now you start taking $25,000 to $30,000 cruises. You help the kids buy their second house. I mean, you can go right down the list, but you spend money like a drunken sailor. So the idea that you're going to spend less and be in a lower tax bracket is usually told to you by some insurance agent or stockbroker that doesn't make the kind of money you make. I've seen it happen all the time. You want to plan for averaging out the last 3 years of your income as your retirement base income. And then if you figure that you should draw no more than 5 to 7% off of your portfolio each year, no matter what it makes, over time we've seen it used to be 4%. With inflation and a few other techniques, it's gone up to 5. I take 5 to 7 because of some uniquenesses that we do. So when you think about that for a minute, right, 5% coming off a $5 million portfolio is $250,000 a year. All right, that's a baseline number. Some people spend more, some people spend less, but that gives you an idea, a ballpark of what you have to save. So you back in then to how many years you're going to practice when you meet that person at 50 or 52, and say, if that's your target, that's what you have to shoot for. The thing we're seeing a lot of today, and it's really sad, is a concept called gray divorce. And there's a funny Saturday Night Live comedy part to this, right? Like, the practitioner retires. It's used to being the boss in a practice, comes home and starts telling their spouse what to do. That lasts about 6 months. That spouse then generally goes to the club, meets a family lawyer, and the next thing you know, somebody gets served. It's happening a lot. The stat is 42% of marriages now. The divorces are over age 50, 30% of them over age 60. There's nothing worse than having accumulated assets all your life, and then all of a sudden half of it is gone. Now you're really in a pickle, and you've got to work longer. There are ways of correcting that. Sometimes it's unavoidable. It just happens. I mean, the fact is they weren't compatible after the first 3 years of marriage, but they never really realized it because they lived separate lives, because one was practicing and one was raising the kids. But when they come back together and they realize that, everything can blow up. Having said that, there are a couple of plans out there where you can, if you have a successful practice, in 5 years, you can rebuild a considerable amount of net worth. In 10 years, you could probably get back to where you were just by using cash balance defined benefit plans, where you can put $200,000-300,000 a year away in a tax managed plan. So you can catch up, you can repair it. It's not easy though, but the fact of the matter is that's a big risk today.
Wow. Really, really incredibly valuable information.
I said that on a podcast recently, and everybody in the audience was sending flowers that afternoon home. It was really kind of funny. Nobody had really thought about it. So I've seen it firsthand. So.
Yeah, we've seen it also. We've seen it too. It gets very expensive and very complicated
And
when
it's emotionally draining. It's really sad. It's really sad.
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, very, very much so. So this is an interesting rule of thumb, Paul. So you are essentially saying, let me give this back to you if I have it correctly. You're saying, and we deal with a lot of specialists who are very high income earners, anywhere between high six-figure and seven-figure incomes. And so what you're saying is the average of that income over a 3-year period is what they want to be able to
You should plan on that for your retirement. Yeah.
For retirement.
Yeah, because you can't, your lifestyle, you basically spent that money when you were practicing. So maybe you'll be saving a little less on employee costs, you'll be saving a little less on retirement plans, but you'll make that up and then some by, if you have 2 homes, joining the country club that's at the second home. And you can go right down the list, and they should be able to do that. They have the time now. They've earned that right, but you have to plan for that. It's you could all of a sudden go into austerity mode. There are some that do that, but it's rare.
Yes, it's kind of hard to make that shift. Very hard to make it.
Yeah.
Incredibly insightful information.
And it's doable, by the way. It's not unattainable. You just have to plan for it. You have to recognize that and then put the money away to do it. And you can. And there's different things. I mean, dentists are some of the smartest people I've ever met. There's some that are going to invent the wheel and do other things and consult with people. There's one person that I work with. They were a husband and wife dentist team, just great partners, and they set up their own little Shark Tank type of thing and are incubating seed companies right now doing it. I mean, it's marvelous. He went back to school to get an MBA from Wharton at 60 years old. Just incredible. And so they come up with different ways to make money, but the key is to plan it out. You just don't wake up one morning and go, you know what, I'm going to keep spending this, but I don't know where I'm going to get it from. It's a little bit harder than that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Hey, I want to ask you another question. I don't know I don't think we've talked about this. How is are you getting doctors who are asking about their financial future and planning, who are looking at selling to DSOs?
Yeah, you're seeing more and more of that, all over. I mean, there's this dangling of a carrot, right, with some pretty high upfront money, and that's creating a sense of, there's some it's just greed, but others, they want to get out, they're tired of practicing, and it's a nice exit strategy. The best sales I've seen are folks that found and worked on finding a very good, competent associate and brought that associate up that knows the practice, knows the patients. The best sales are always internal sales. The multiples are higher. There's less worry about making sure you have to report numbers each quarter to a private equity firm. It's just a cleaner transaction. I still love that model. I think that model works.
So do we. We're big advocates.
Yeah, we didn't even rehearse that.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you're right. There are some people where it's a good move. It's a smart move.
Yeah. Somebody's sick. They're moving. They're getting divorced. Maybe they want to do that. But on balance, if you're looking for a good exit strategy, you plan for that many years in advance, and you bring in a young person you can mentor, maybe 2, maybe 3. The person that you and I know needed 3 people to take over what that guy, I call him the machine of Melbourne.
Yeah.
What he does on his own, but the fact of the matter is an internal sale always seems to be a little bit better, because if your practice is worth a multiple of 6, internally it's worth a multiple of 9, because that person knows the patients and won't lose the patients.
Yeah.
How many years would you recommend that before they bring on that associate, before they retire?
I say it's a minimum of 5, because there's 2 things going on, right? The person learning the practice, but you learning the person. You might find out in 2 years, wow, that woman was the greatest salesperson in the world. She's really terrible. You want to figure that out before you get to the lawyers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's talk a little bit about financial literacy. Sarah, you and I were talking about this.
It's a big issue, Alan. And when in our state, I was close to a woman, still am, named Alex Sink, who became the chief financial officer. And when Alex took over, she was a former banker. When she took the state job as CFO, she put together something called the financial literacy panel. as amazing as it is, most states in the country did not teach their students in high school anything to do with financial literacy. They made them take music lessons. They made them go to the gym. None of these students ever picked up a trombone again, and none of them ever played football again. But figuring out how to get a mortgage, get the right auto loan versus a lease, how to spend less than you earn, all those things. What is the difference between a checking account and a savings account was never taught. We now in Florida, thankfully, I took a year off and was president of my national association, but before that, my state association. We got the state education department to adopt the fact that they need 2 credits to be able to graduate in Florida with financial literacy background. And many other states are doing the same thing. And I just think it's the smartest move. In dental schools, in chiropractic schools, it's never taught. Someone alluded to this earlier. The clinicians get taught everything about that, but nobody teaches them how to run a business or stay in practice. Now, that's good for folks like you, or it's good for folks like me because we can teach them later. But if they learned earlier, they could have been avoiding a lot of mistakes.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Well, congratulations on that. That's a huge accomplishment. So
it is. There's some funny stories attached to that. If you don't mind me doing a little segue along that financial literacy, do I have a moment to do that?
We're big advocates for this.
Well, there's a field that has become, in my view, more important than standard and typical investing or financial planning called behavioral economics. And behavioral economics is essentially the marrying of psychology and investment planning. And we're seeing this play out in a number of ways. I always tell clients that you need a coach. You need a financial coach. You need a business coach. You need a CPA. I like to separate out the CPA a lot of times because I want them in a certain role, an overseer, if you will. But these behavioral economic biases, there's 6 biases I'll run through very quickly because we're seeing them develop right now. One is called loss aversion. And it's very interesting. If you look at the biases of behavioral economics, loss aversion basically states that it's more important for people to avoid losing money than they are happy when they gain money. Really interesting. You think about it the exact reverse, right? You're really thrilled when you bought enough NVIDIA to go on a vacation, right? It's not that. It's the idea that if I lose money, I'm more depressed than anything I'd be happy about gaining on NVIDIA. The second one is overconfidence, a bias that's really kind of funny. People tend to overestimate their own abilities. And God forbid they have a couple of wins. Now they feel like they could take your job or my job. And then all of a sudden they get slammed. We go through these biases with them a lot. The other one's called a herd mentality. This is a tendency to follow what your friend is doing. And we're seeing that now a lot in investing, right? This is the market that's been going up for a couple of years. It's only a matter of time. It's not if, but when the market's correct. It doesn't mean we're going to have a 1929 crash. Good friend of mine, Andrew Ross Sorkin, who's the morning host on CNBC, just wrote a book called 1929, and he's advertising it on the talk shows. And it really upsets me because he's basically saying this is coming. I don't believe that to be the case. And I could give you reasons why I don't think it's coming. But the point of the matter is you're going to have a correction. We have this FOMO, fear of missing out, that's going on where clients, and you'll see it. And it's one of the reasons the market should stay up between now and the end of the year. There are a lot of clients and there are a lot of their financial advisors that have not had the clients in the market and now are rushing to get in the market to try to catch the last wave of the year, because otherwise they're going to look really, really bad when they show them their results at the end of December. Anchoring is a bias that again, it's almost kind of funny. It relies heavily on early information when making decisions and not modifying that information when you see other information that might contradict it. Confirmation bias, the habit of seeking out information that confirms your gut feelings, not what necessarily might be the answer, but what confirms your gut feelings. And then finally, recency bias. It's the concept of what just happened will keep happening. That's what we see now in the market, that the market will continue to go up. In our world, we have a saying that trees don't grow up to the sky, right? And that's what we're kind of watching out for. I'll leave you with a couple of stats on this. If we tell clients, particularly younger clients, to stay fully invested and don't try to time the market. But if you're fully invested between 2005 and 2024, you averaged 10.35% per year. Up and down, you still averaged over 10% a year. If you miss the 10 best days of the year in the market, you only averaged 6.14. If you miss the 20 best days of that year, you average 3.46. And then if you missed a month, 30 days of the best days of the market, so 11 months you were in, but you missed 1 month, your average over that 2005 to 2024 period was 1.31%. So if you're going to be in the market, it's like being almost pregnant. Don't go in halfway. The bottom line is you're in, you're fully invested, be diversified, but don't try to pull this market timing stuff because invariably it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good advice. Very good advice.
Great stats.
Yeah, Paul, this literacy, this financial literacy thing, I can't say enough about it. You know, we're starting a program that I have wanted to provide for years and just haven't gotten around to it. But we're actually going to launch it early next year, and it's just going to be a 12-month curriculum. And we're targeting new doctors. We're actually targeting doctors in residency. And we're targeting doctors anybody who's about to go into private practice, giving them all of the basics. It's going to be ridiculously cheap. We're doing it as a service.
Such a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, new doctors, they're not necessarily our market.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have something that we could offer to anybody who comes along. And we want to cover all of these things that I'm listening to. I'm thinking, Paul needs to do one of our sessions on these.
Yes.
I'd be happy to. I'm passionate about it only because you're looking at somebody who made mistakes when I was younger and I was in the business. And to have a coach that was pushing me along to say, no, do this, do that. You know, one of the things that I get a lot of young doctors that come to me and I give them 2 hours of advice. I charge them for 1 hour. They were generally referred by a very successful practitioner I have, and it's a new hire, and they've just gotten married and they've just had a baby. And so the older doctor wants the younger doctor to be successful. But one of the things I tell them to do, and there's so much material. When we were younger, Alan, we would read Money Magazine or something, or maybe Wall Street Journal or Barron's, right? There's so much great printed stuff out there right now. Just read a couple of things a week on basic investment. Learn the terminology. If any of your listeners are from the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, they'll remember a store called Syms, SYMS. If you didn't have any money, but you had a job in New York, so you had to wear a suit, you would shop at Syms because you could go there and buy a designer suit for a fraction of the cost that Barney's would charge. I'm really dating myself there, but it really happened. And Syms had a great, their tagline on their advertising was, an educated consumer is my best customer. And if you think about that for a minute, when you're educated in finance, you can't be taken advantage of by an insurance agent or somebody masquerading as a financial planner, because you know the questions to ask. And you can get it off a Vanguard website. You can get it off a Morningstar. There's so many places you can get objective, independent information. Just learn the terms. The funniest thing happens, and I know this as being president of the Financial Planning Association, when you run into a client that throws out a couple of terms, you all of a sudden pay attention because you know that person can't be snowed. It's really an amazing phenomena that happens. That alone can both protect you and also teach you.
Entirely, 100%, 100%. Yes,
So-
Sarah.
I see, Sarah, I picked up what you have now, Alan. I can see when Sarah has a question.
Yeah, I do. And you just touched on it. So
That pen,
what are some of the key things that a doctor should be looking for when interviewing a financial advisor?
first and foremost, is ask them if they are a fiduciary.
Okay.
And if you get a really long-winded explanation, it's like I like my politicians. I just want a yes or no, and then give me the explanation. Can you say yes or can you say no? So, are you a fiduciary? Yes. Are you, instead of them saying, well, no, I operate under the best interest standards, which is almost like a fiduciary, which is what a lot of the brokers say because they can't be fiduciaries because their companies won't let them be fiduciaries. A good screening for that is if they're a certified financial planner. If they're a CFP, they have to be a fiduciary. Okay. But the reason that's important is legally they're held to a higher standard and they have to put their interests behind yours. And if something goes wrong and you wind up in court, that's going to be the way you win or lose. If they were a fiduciary and they did something that they should have known better, they're done. You win. Simple as that. And so it's really, really important. Secondly, in my view, the fiduciaries are better trained because they're more careful. They're more careful with your money. They're more careful with the strategy. So I like that. But financial planners are like any other professional. You want to look at their background. You want to see if there are any complaints against them, that type of thing. There are easy ways of finding that. If anybody ever has a question, I can show you the different websites to go to, and I can give you my information at the end, and you can tell your listeners. But the fact of the matter is, it's important to find somebody who's operating at that level, the fiduciary standard.
Yeah, that's very, very good, Paul. I can't imagine. The number of times I've made the mistake of hiring somebody as a quote expert without investigating carefully, and I kick myself. And there are so many easy ways to do it.
I was going to say, it's at our fingertips now. I mean, before you'd have to, we use payphones, for God's sakes. Now we touch our phone and we know everything about everybody.
Yeah.
Let's just to wind it down in sort of some kind of summary form. What do you think are the top mistakes to avoid, Paul, in terms of
start saving money early?
Yeah. Okay.
Start saving money early. I think that's big. And watch your debt.
Yeah.
And if you have the debt, pay down the debt as quickly as possible. You might take on more debt later because you're expanding or you're buying something different. That's all great. But don't get strung by just taking on too much debt too early, and try to find some place that you can save, however little it is. It's really that simple. It's that simple. And then I take it one step further, don't go into a town where there's 15 people that have your specialty. Go find an outlying town somewhere where you can dominate the rotary.
Mm-hmm.
And I must tell you, I can't tell you how we meet doctors all the time who come to us and come on. And the ones who have practices like that, they had to give up a little bit to move to Ada, Oklahoma.
I'll give you one.
Oklahoma City, and
I'll give you one. The biggest chiropractor I think I ever dealt with, or at least in the top 3, is in a little town, retired now, in a little town called Spring Hill, Florida.
Okay.
It's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. I mean, there's nothing going on. Now it's growing up and there are things happening, but he just dominated it. And a great practitioner and a great business person and great personality. He had all that, but he did it in a small town and there was nobody even close to competing with him.
I get it. I totally get it. What do you think, if you can give us a few items here, what do you think are the best practices for long-term wealth, long-term success as far as wealth accumulation?
Well, I think the regularity and consistency, right? I think singles and doubles with an occasional home run is far better than swinging for the fences. And I think when you see a practitioner doing that, almost invariably they're going to be more successful. Now there are folks that do nothing for 25 years and then all of a sudden hit it out of the park 3 times. The really funny thing is they look in the mirror and start believing they can do that, and then they lose it in retirement, but that's another story. But, the fact of the matter is somebody doing it consistently is usually the best way to do it. I think also structuring your practice from a tax perspective is really important to get it right. It's why I love the CPA in that relationship, and I keep firing CPAs until I find the right one for the practice. I help them find the CPA. Most folks in my business, the egos are the size of Kansas, right? And they don't want to say to the client, the CPA is more important. I think the CPA is more important. I want to help them hire a great CPA. I try to find them that because I think that's a big deal. In the state of Florida, we're very careful about litigation protection because, the billboards say it all, right? And it's in many states, but Florida is the poster child for it. There's ways of owning assets where you can protect. So many times I see brokers put clients in joint accounts, husband and wife, joint tenants with rights of survivorship. It's a no-no. Use tenants by the entirety. It means that if the doctor gets sued, the assets are automatically in the spouse's name. If the spouse gets sued, the assets go into the doctor's name. It avoids, the lawyer can eventually get to them, but the lawyers aren't that, they don't want to work that hard trying to track those assets through a labyrinth of those types of things. It's knowing those techniques to be able to protect against something that just might come out of left field. That usually is the thing that blows up a good financial plan, something coming from left field.
Yeah, very, very interesting, Paul. Yeah, love this.
I'm feeling a second episode coming on you too. I mean, we got tax and estate planning to discuss, student loans to discuss.
Well, that makes me feel good. It sounds like I passed the test. That makes me feel good because I do this in regular media a lot, but if I blow it with the interviewer, I don't know that interviewer and I'm not going to see them in the gym tomorrow. I had to get this one right because otherwise Alan will look at me and go, thanks, what are friends for?
Well, Paul, I never sat down and asked you these questions before. We're usually just kind of passing each other, schmoozing for a few minutes, but this is just incredibly insightful information, enormously helpful. Where can our listeners and viewers, where can they learn more about SeaBridge Private Wealth?
You just go to the website, www.seabridge.com, or they could text or call me directly. They don't have to be a client. I give out loads of free advice for the obvious reasons is that I work thankfully because I want to, not because I have to. I love my job. I love helping people, and I'm happy to give them advice. If they call me again to work with me, great. If they don't, I just feel like I did a good deed that week. But they can reach me at Auslander@seabridge.com. But happy to answer questions. And like I said, again, they don't have to become a client. I love doing that. Invariably, if you do the right job, somebody's going to say, hey, can you do more for me?
Absolutely. We're very big believers in that. But this is great, Paul, and very, very, I really appreciate your insights and all the information.
I appreciate you and Sarah and your questions, and I hope we can do it again sometime. Thank you, Alan.
Yes, thank you.
So much.
Be well. Sarah, it's a pleasure to meet you. Okay.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Thanks to our audience. Don't forget to subscribe to Inside the Practice so you never miss an episode. And if you found today's conversation helpful, please share it with your colleagues and your partners. Thanks very much. See you again on Inside the Practice.
Thanks for joining us on Inside the Practice, sponsored by ePractice Manager. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. See you next time.